Here, I would like to again introduce Nicholas Nuss, the Senior Data Management Consultant at IBM Watson Health. So thank you so much, Nick, for your time and participation. We would love to know more about your professional experience and background. Over to you, Nick.
Oh, thank you very much, Karishma. So my professional background is 11 years ago. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University with a sociology degree, and I came out and found a position as a business intelligence report developer. And I was creating reports and passing them along to different analysts and data scientists for them to be able to look at things. And then the stock market crashed. And I was fortunate enough to be in the position and retain my position. I wasn't let go. And I grew the skills of a data manager by really building more databases to help support those data scientists and analysts. About 5 years after that, I moved into a role of a product owner on a Scrum team and software development type stuff. But then after they decided that I was not really a fit in that role, they asked that I step aside to a different position, to where I got I left the company and got my job at IBM Watson Health. And because of my background with the building databases and data scientists, or for the data scientists, I was a perfect fit within the IBM world. I've always had a knack for math and logic, and so it was really just kind of the perfect job for me to really fill that role. Today, I also do have to state that everything that I am saying is on behalf of myself and not anything representative of IBM or IBM Watson Health. But I am here to provide a little bit of insight into the career path of a data manager. I'm also a blogger at Vocation Cultivation, where I speak about emotional intelligence and leadership. And so it keeps my plate pretty busy.
That's fantastic, Nick. That was really interesting. Great. So, Nick, what are the roles and responsibilities of a data manager?
So the number one thing that a data manager does is ensure data integrity. And with this, it means that we have security of the data, that we're not placing it in, we're not mishandling it. We keep things encrypted if they are sensitive pieces of information, and we ensure the accuracy of the data. So if we're passing along, inaccurate information to data scientists and analysts who we work very closely with, they can't do their job. So the number one role of a data manager is to ensure that the data is accurate and secure. We do this by cleaning the data using some small scripts, if then else logic. We ensure that different mappings of the data. So if we are trying to match together two different sources of information, everything is going to line up in the very end, and we're not going to have to provide two different databases. We can put them all into one. We have to manage the punctuality of deliverables as well, since everything really starts for a data scientist and an analyst with a database. We're the first step in that process. We have to ensure that that database is ready and available when a scientist needs it. We also have to communicate. We're the bridge between the business side and the technical world. I've been on a lot of conversations with people who use the reporting tools that I help create, where they don't really care how everything is done. They just care about the end process. And so when I start to talk about my job, I have to ensure that I speak in business terms with them, but I can also take things back and speak in a technical mindset with my colleagues.
Fantastic. So what is your typical day as a data manager?
Within a typical day of a data manager, we may have to email a late supplier. So the number one thing that a lot of data shops, they're collecting data from outside sources. They're not necessarily the ones originating the data. So we have to make sure that we are on top of people providing that information to us, because like I said, we are the ones providing the information up the chain. So we have to ensure that everything is to us promptly. And a lot of times different suppliers, they don't want to necessarily provide that data in a timely manner. We might have to chase down bad information. So like I said, we are receiving data from outside sources, and we have to track down exactly where in the process piece of bad information came through on. If it's something that we've done, we have to ensure that we make the change and communicate effectively what we actually did to ensure that that issue does not happen again. If it's with a data supplier that's providing us the information, we have to ensure that they are making the change and they can replace that information in the future. We have to identify logic enhancements. So we can't necessarily rely on our logic, that we set up years ago to be correct and accurate all the way through. Like I said, different data suppliers, they might have changed something on their side. And so what used to be, a code that said, that provided the one piece of information, it may have changed a year and a half later. And so we want to make sure it's representative of the information at the current moment. Lastly, we also construct data models. So that a database can efficiently run, we have to ensure that everything links together. And with the data model in place, we can provide that up the chain as well to ensure that our analysts and data scientists know how to actually utilize our databases that we're building.
Wow, that's really interesting, I'm sure. So, Nick, how to break into data manager role?
If you are interested in being a data manager, I would say that you would need to look for any position that's in business intelligence. Analytics are going to be a key indicator that they've got data behind the scenes. And with just the influx of data and how companies are really utilizing it on a day-to-day basis, there's really a need for data managers, the people with the technical skills to actually create the databases. So really, there's so many different ways that you can break into it. You can apply for a entry-level position and try to work your way up a little bit. You can also start with, if you had a little bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset, you could create your own shop. And if you have enough Excel skills, really just go out there and start asking your local businesses, hey, do you have data that I can really help you with? Get it into a usable working data set and provide it back to you, and perhaps provide insight on them. So really there's multiple paths that you can choose. It depends on how far you actually want to take the responsibility on yourself or go out and find a position.
Thank you so much for the answer, Nick. So here comes my next question.
Mm-hmm.
3 tips to make your resume stand out for data manager position.
So the different ways to make your resume stand out. Number one is just Excel skills. If you don't have simple Excel skills, you're really not going to be a good fit as a data manager. It's going to be very difficult to take things or to pick things up. Since Excel is at the bare minimum a very flat database, if you don't get those concepts, you're not going to be able to stand out in an interview. The second one is you should really point out that you're a logical thinker. You should have some aptitude to be able to code and not necessarily create programs, but understand how logic works. So if then else logic is really one of the main ones that we can use, as well as trying to match between 2 different columns. We can also do, we also have to do stuff like that. So really some basic coding would be another good one. If you're able to show off statistics skills as well, so any type of science background from a university, they are also going to have a statistics background, and that's going to shine through on an interview as well.
Wonderful. So Nick, what is the best job search strategy for data manager position?
Okay. In order to search for a job, like I said, so many companies are looking into data on a daily basis, and you're not going to find many companies that don't have data to work with. Some of the strategies to find those jobs are to look for business intelligence, information systems, and companies that are looking for data scientists. Because I work so closely with analysts and data scientists, the companies that are looking for data scientists will need a data manager to help support that. The scientists and analysts are not going to be creating their own databases necessarily, so they're going to need that technical person to help them out. There's just positions everywhere, and with the vast amount of big data companies, especially with AI coming in, you need a lot of data to go into those types of systems. Data managers are just as vital as data scientists.
Fantastic. So what are the 5 most common interview questions for data manager position?
Okay. So some of the questions are pretty much a situational type of a question. One of them that I got was describe a time where you could not meet a deadline, and how did you go about communicating that up the chain? And you're trying to ensure that you can communicate effectively and understand when a deliverable might not be completed, and if you are timely in communicating that up the chain. Another one is describe a time you had to solve a technical problem. Because this is a technical type of role, they need to ensure you can think clearly through a troubleshooting process. One interview that I actually had to take an Excel quiz. They set me down, and it was a macro in the back end, and it tracked the number of clicks that it took for you to complete some tasks and within Excel. And if you exceeded the number of clicks, then you failed the quiz. And I, of course, passed it. There are also questions that I receive about prioritization. If you're able to prioritize different technical responsibilities within the job, and if you're unable to clearly prioritize those, if you are able to communicate to the stakeholders of different teams what should be the priority. Lastly, for the senior role, I was asked questions about how I've been able to help coach our data managers through different technical responsibilities and projects that they've had. So it depends really on the company of what they're specifically looking for, but I think that those are going to be some of the main questions that you're going to get asked, and especially the technical skills.
Wow, seems to be really interesting. In fact, especially the one clicking in Excel and counting the number of clicks. That seemed to be really tricky and interesting as well. Great. Thank you so much for the answer, Nick. So we would love to know, what are the 3 best books or resources to aid in data manager job?
All right. So the number one resource is going to be Google. In all honesty, you're going to have to know your data inside and out, and especially any companies that you're providing data for. If you don't understand different fields within the data set, you should be able to look those up so that you can understand what the data scientists and analysts might be utilizing that information for. The next one is a book. It's called Data Management by Richard Watson. It really dives into the broad world of data management and provides a good overview of what actually goes into modeling, data storage, and different ways to make sure that you're secure in your data. Lastly, any programming book is going to have that Hello World section in the very beginning. That's going to be about as much technical skill as you're going to need. It's going to go into how fields are set up, what's the definition of a character field versus a date field, and then the different types of numeric fields that go into data sets. And then it's also going to help you understand how to handle those correctly. It'll also teach you some of that Boolean logic, that if then else information.
Thank you so much for the answer, Nick. So here comes my next question. What are the 3 key skills required for data manager role?
Okay. So I went through some of the skills before. I know that Excel is going to be just, if you don't have the Excel skills, you're really not going to be able to pull out some small pieces of information and really dive into that data. It's used to look into different types of data files. You're able to look into CSV information very easily within that, as well as running some simple reports within the data to ensure that your data is healthy and accurate. So again, the logical thinker, being able to think through a technical problem and provide solutions for those technical problems. If you're able to do that, it's going to be an immense skill for a data manager. And then lastly, those statistics skills. You may need to help out an analyst or a data scientist to understand exactly what's going into a problem that they're having so that you can go back and troubleshoot that information within the data set.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Nick, what are the 4 challenges you face in your job?
Okay. The first challenge is, since being a data manager is a technical role, we understand that problems are not solved in a linear fashion. I could spend 8 hours looking into a problem and still not be any closer to a solution than when I started. With technical problems, there are so many ways that an issue can originate. It could be the environment that we're working in. It could be the data that's actually being incorrect. There could be a field that is making one change and we're just not catching it. There's really so many different ways that it could be. And then being able to communicate that as well up the chain, because we create the databases and we have to be that first step. Being able to communicate that you weren't able to come to a conclusion yet, after a day of looking into something, and not really being able to provide a concrete time of resolution is difficult sometimes. The second one is security. Security is huge within data. We saw a few years ago the Target breach of credit card information, and is just something that should be on the mind of anybody that's a data manager. You should treat your data as securely as possible. Make sure that it's on the correct servers. Make sure that they are password protected, and you're not taking anything outside of the walls of your company. So if you are not very safe with your data, you might have to be, you're going to have a lot more challenges than if you actually work in a safe manner. On that as well, some sensitive information, you can actually be held legally responsible if you are blatantly disregarding safety protocols. The other one that I was mentioning before is working with suppliers. Many times you are, as a data manager, getting that information from other sources, and they may not view you as a priority to get information to. For anybody that has to work with a client, a mutual client with a supplier, you need to kind of remind them that you are both providing a service for that client, and you need the information to be able to do your job. The last one, as I was saying before, some laws. Laws are really changing around data and how companies have to handle data. We see in Europe the GDPR being passed a few years back, and having to ensure that you delete members' data if they request it to be deleted. There's nothing quite as drastic within the United States yet, or at least within the federal government, but we could see that some of those laws find their way over here as well.
Superb. Great. So here comes my next question. What is the career path of a data manager?
Excellent. Data manager is really a gateway position to anything that has to do with data science. You can really go into an analytic position or a data science position, and knowing that background of how the data is actually created will be a great step up if you were to try to peruse those positions. The next one would be a programmer. Since we are in a technical role, it's a great step and a great fit to just move into a programmer type of a role. You could also be a database administrator. They're the ones that really look into the environments, ensure that the databases are running smoothly, not necessarily looking into the data, but ensuring that all of the databases are operating as expected. You could also be a project manager or a product manager. Project managers are ones that ensure that deliverables get out on time, and really just making sure that the team is running smoothly. And then a product manager is understanding what you're actually providing to a client at the end of the day. A lot of the products are now so data driven that you would be a perfect fit understanding the data behind the scenes. The next one would be a business analyst. There are so many roles that a data manager can move into. A business analyst is going to be one to really look at how business processes work and try to improve them, whether with new tools or new ways of doing things. And then also security positions are going to be huge within the next couple of years as well, ensuring that you are being secure and following all of the laws of the country that you are holding the data for. You're really the linchpin between the technical side and the business side as well. So any position that you go into, whether it be technical or business oriented, you're going to be a great fit.
Fantastic. I'm sure, if there are so many roles data manager can go into, so it is really beneficial that there are so many opportunities for a data manager.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So, Nick, 3 things a candidate should consider while selecting an employer.
Okay. The first one is the investment in the tools. Since you're going to be working in the data on a day in, day out basis, you should be able to ask what type of tools they are actually providing to the data managers, whether it be SPSS, data stage, or homegrown tools. You're going to need to understand some of those and see if they provide training as well. If they don't really have any of those tools, you might really be stuck with a lot of the manual testing and double checking of data, and that's going to take up a lot more time than a company that's actually providing you the correct tools to be able to do your job. The next one is going to be the culture. This position could be underappreciated in many companies since it's not as prestigious as being a data scientist or an analyst. They're the ones that are creating the deliverables that are being sold, and you are in support of them. So your customers are really the data scientists and analysts. You want to find a culture that sees you as the important position that you are in support of the highly prestigious data scientist. Also, you want to ask what type of data you're going to be working with. As I was saying before, with healthcare data, you could be legally responsible for any misuse of the data if you don't follow all of the rules. And so if that's not something that you're willing to, if you're not going to be focused on the position and you're just using it as a way to jump into a higher role to begin with, it might not be a good fit to move into a data management type of a role.
Thank you so much for such valuable tips. So here comes my last question, Nick. What advice do you have for aspiring data manager to be successful in their roles?
Okay. The first one is to be curious. You're going to be handed a ton of data, and if you're able to go into that and really kind of look at things before they're provided to an analyst or a data scientist, you could find some really good gems to be able to push up the chain. Also, never stop learning. There's so many ways that data is changing and new tools are coming out on a regular basis. So you want to stay sharp and stay focused on what the next big thing is. With blockchain and AI coming out as well, they need data to support those types of tools. And so if you understand how AI works and how your data could fit into an AI scheme, that's going to be a great career booster for you. Lastly, learn how to troubleshoot with a scientific method. So if you're able to find a problem and then map your way to a solution following a hypothesis and securing different variables so that they're not changing to make sure that what you thought is the issue is correct, troubleshooting skills are going to be invaluable to your day-to-day job.
Thank you so much, Nick, for such valuable answers.